Hello, everybody, and welcome to AgriRoutes. This is the platform where we talk about all things related to careers in agriculture. We talk about the people who make things happen within the spaces and how they shape our industry on a day-to-day. Okay. So today is the day that we talk about career routes for animal scientists. Like I said in my previous video that I am an animal scientist, and so we will focus first on animal scientists, right? But we will also engage other disciplines within agriculture because it's a very broad field, and I think it's exciting how much how much is being done within the industry and how much one can contribute towards the industry. Okay, so today I'll be highlighting the career routes that an animal scientist can take. I will also give examples of the roles that they function in, right, within the routes that they've chosen. And I'll also give examples of where they work on a day-to-day basis, right? Okay. So the first route I would like us to consider is that of an animal nutritionist, right? If you know, you know, okay? So animal nutritionists function in different roles within the spaces that they are employed. One, they can function as formulators, although not everyone who is a formulator is a nutritionist. But nutritionists do function as formulators, they function as technical advisors, they function as lecturers as well. So if you're wondering what a formulator does, a formulator decides on the ingredients that must be included in the feed to make a complete diet for the animal. Just like humans have nutritionists and dietitians, animals have formulators as well. And these formulators can be nutritionists within the discipline of animal nutrition. Okay. So you will find formulators working within feed companies. That is where they mostly work, where feed for animals is being produced. Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is that animals eat feed and humans eat food, right? So there's a difference. It's not the same thing. Okay. So we will be referring to feed as we go along this episode. So another function or another role that an animal nutritionist can fulfill is that of being a technical advisor. So what a technical advisor does is that they bridge the gap between the feed that has been made by the factory and how it is applied in the field, right? So you'll find technical advisors advising farmers on how to feed, when to feed, and what to feed at which growth stage, right? So that is what they do. Very important within the farming business because technical advisors have the knowledge of what the feed will do to the animal, the results it will produce should it not be done right, and they safeguard the use of the products that are being manufactured within the companies that they work for. Okay, so that is what technical advisors do, although it's not limited to this example that I am giving you. I think I should just mention that most careers are not limited to the examples that I'm giving, but mostly they function like that. Okay. So the other thing that an animal nutritionist can do is become a lecturer, because within the space of agriculture, one must teach those who are upcoming about animal nutrition. So they function as lecturers as well. Okay, so where do they work, these people? They work at feed companies, they work at feed additive companies, they work at research and development institutes, because as much as feed is being produced and medication, for example, is being produced, they need to keep up with the science that is already evolving within our world. Okay, so if genetics are changing, then definitely what is being fed to the animal also needs to change. So this is why you will find nutritionists in spaces where research and development are happening. Okay, and they also work for feed regulatory bodies. Because it makes sense that if an animal scientist formulated the diet, then another must check whether what is being formulated is being done ethically and also is the correct thing. But they also function to standardize what is being produced. Because as much as companies have their intellectual properties in terms of what they produce, it's very important to make sure that everybody produces what meets the standard so that you, the consumer, are protected in terms of what you consume at the end of the day. The third career route I would like us to consider is that of research and development. So these are the guys who go on to further their studies by doing their masters and they do their PhDs, right? So what they do is steward the science behind the science. They make sure that the industry is up to date with the global scientific community, but not only that, they use research and development to find solutions to problems that farmers may have, or they use research and development to merge the solutions that farmers have in their practical spaces with the scientific knowledge that is ever evolving. So there are researchers who function as that bridge to say, okay, a farmer has used a certain system and it has proven to work. Now let's get the science behind it and publish it so that it is known and so that it is stewarded in a way that continues sustainability within our industry. So researchers don't only just read papers and write papers that are only concerned with the things that they have thought and conceptualized. There are researchers who work with farmers and who work with industry to make sure that the knowledge that industry has and the knowledge that farmers have is conserved and documented in a scientific manner that the global community can understand. Okay, so you will find them, like I mentioned, within research organizations, and you will also find them within institutions of higher learning, but they do also work for the private sector, where you will find them in breeding companies, for example, because as much as our global climate is changing, so it means genetics for the animals are changing. So you will find animal scientists who are there to understand the trends, because if someone understands the trends, then they're able to better advise the farmers who produce the food for the consumer ultimately. Okay, so and then the other discipline or career route I would like us to consider is that of animal health and biosecurity. These are the people who steward biosecurity protocols within farms and within factories, or should I say processing plants where food is being developed, right? So you will find animal scientists being the stewards of biosecurity, for example, at an abattoir or at a farm level, right? So they develop protocols, they implement these protocols, and they make sure that food production is done in a manner that is safe, in a manner that is ethical, and in a manner that is protecting the consumer at the end of the day. So these are the guys that function in those spaces. But some of them are called meat inspectors, although not all animal scientists are meat inspectors, and not all meat inspectors are animal scientists, but you will find animal scientists that are meat inspectors at abattoir level to make sure that the meat that is being produced is safe for the consumer. But not only that, that the carcasses, when they're being graded at the abattoir, it's the correct thing that is being done and that the consumer ultimately gets what they are paying for. Okay. Then the other one I would like us to consider is the career route of conservation and biodiversity, right? So when we think of conservation and biodiversity, we may think Kruger National Park or some other national park, for example, Ado National Park. Yes, you will find animal scientists who work there. They will function as nutritionists. The animals need to eat, they need to be fed, but also their feeding in the wild needs to be stewarded because, say, for example, a certain portion of the Kruger National Park runs out of grass in winter. So what the production scientist will do is advise on which supplements can be given within that period so that the animals don't die. So that's the type of role that they play at national parks as nutritionists. But they can also be physiologists in those spaces. Because remember, animal physiology is also a discipline within animal science. So if, for example, a tiger was trying to get the giraffe, and the giraffe kicked it to such an extent that it broke its jaw, the physiologist is able to assist with the rehabilitation of the tiger, right? Until it can stand on its 2 feet and go and tiger again. So those are the type of functions that they can function in terms of biodiversity and conservation. Okay, then you will find them working not only at national parks, but they work for NGOs that steward and champion the work of biodiversity and genetics conservation in terms of the wildlife. Okay. The next career route I would like us to consider is that of sales and agribusiness. Now, this is a huge industry within the animal science space, right? So these guys bridge the gap between what companies produce and farmers. They are sometimes called technical advisors, like I mentioned in the beginning, but mostly they are referred to as sales reps. And I've seen that they make terrific sales reps because the animal scientist understands what the product will do to the animal and how the animal will respond to the product, which actually makes them engage very well with farmers, feeding them the information that the company needs to feed them so that they use the product correctly, but also getting feedback from the farmers, which they take back to the institutions that they work for, so that the product is improved and everybody wins at the end of the day. So you will find them being referred to as sales reps, like I mentioned, but in some instances, they are also referred to as technical advisors. And these are the guys who are most likely on the road making sales and making sure that the products that are being made in feed companies, in animal pharmaceutical companies, get to the farmers. And lastly, the example of a career option I would like us to consider is that of an animal scientist who works as a policy developer or a policy enforcer and regulator. An example I can give you is that of someone who works for the Department of Agriculture in the division of Act 36. So I'll read out what Act 36 is so that you understand where the animal scientist features. Okay, so Act 36 is the Fertilizer, Farm Feeds, Agricultural Remedies and Stock Remedies Act 36 of 1947, because humans have been eating since. So within this division, they regulate fertilizer production, farm feed production, remedies or medication production, but they also regulate the import and the export of these products within the country. So that is where you will find an animal scientist doing their thing. Okay, and there you have it. So I hope you have gained a tad bit of knowledge in terms of what an animal scientist does and how they function on a day-to-day basis. So we will leave it there for today. Bye for now.